He thought his wife was sleeping, but she'd been gone for days. The alarm clock blinked 7:15 a.m., its red digits glowing through the dim light of the bedroom. Daniel turned over, reaching out to pull the blanket around his wife, Emily. Her side of the bed was cold. Again. He frowned, thinking maybe she had gone downstairs early. But when his hand brushed the pillow, he froze. It was perfectly fluffed, untouched. The faint scent of her lavender shampoo still lingered, but the bed hadn't been slept in for days. A sick feeling crept up his chest. He stumbled out of bed, calling her name. Emily. No answer. The house was silent, too silent. Coffee mug still on the counter. Her phone on the nightstand. Her car still in the driveway. But Emily was gone. Daniel's heartbeat raced as he picked up her phone. The last message was 3 days old. From him. Good night, babe. Don't stay up too late. She never replied. That's when he noticed something strange on the bedroom floor, faint marks on the carpet, like something heavy had been dragged. And right beside it, a single earring, half buried in the rug. The same pair she wore the night she disappeared. Daniel's breathing quickened. He backed away slowly, his knees weak. Emily, he whispered, his voice cracking. The room seemed to close in on him. Then the front door creaked open downstairs. Someone was inside the house. He froze. His heart pounded so loudly he could hear it echoing in his ears. Footsteps, soft but sure, moving across the wooden floor. He wanted to call the police, but his phone was dead. He hadn't charged it overnight. The sound grew closer, coming up the stairs. Step. 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 Emily, he said again, his voice trembling. But the figure that appeared in the doorway wasn't his wife. And that was when Daniel realized, whoever was standing there knew exactly what had happened to her. 3 weeks earlier, everything had seemed normal. Daniel and Emily Thompson lived in a quiet neighborhood in Lakewood, Ohio. Their house was small but cozy, a white 2-story home with a blue mailbox and a front yard filled with tulips Emily had planted herself. Daniel was an accountant, quiet and methodical. Emily worked part-time at a local daycare and spent her free time painting. They weren't perfect, but they were stable. At least, that's what Daniel liked to believe. It all started on a Tuesday night. Emily came home later than usual. Her hair was messy, and she smelled faintly of cigarette smoke, which was odd because she didn't smoke. Daniel noticed but said nothing. He just smiled and asked, "Rough day?" She nodded quickly and went straight to the shower without saying a word. That night, Daniel woke up around 2 a.m. to a faint sound, a voice whispering outside the window. He sat up, listening. It was gone as soon as he noticed it. Probably just a dream, he thought. The next morning, Emily was quiet. She barely touched her breakfast. When he asked if she was okay, she said she was just tired. He didn't press. But later that evening, he found her sitting in the car with the engine off, staring at nothing. When he opened the door, she jumped. "Emily, are you sure everything's all right?" he asked again. She gave him a nervous smile. "Yeah, I'm fine. Just thinking." But that wasn't true. Because that night, she locked herself in the bathroom for nearly an hour. Daniel heard her talking to someone softly, her phone. Maybe. But when he knocked, she snapped, "Just a minute." Later, he found her phone left on the counter. No calls. No messages. Nothing. 2 days passed, and things grew stranger. Emily began checking the locks multiple times before bed. She jumped whenever the phone rang. One night she even insisted Daniel sleep with the lights on. When he asked what was wrong, she whispered, "I think someone's been following me." "Who?" he asked, his stomach tightening. She looked out the window into the dark street. "I don't know." But I've seen the same black car parked across from the house. Every night. Daniel went outside to check, but by the time he reached the curb, the car was gone. The next morning, Emily was gone too. No note. No message. Just her ring left on the nightstand and her half-finished painting of the tulip garden, still wet. Daniel reported her missing. The police searched, questioned neighbors, and checked local hospitals. Nothing. Now, standing in their quiet bedroom 3 days later, Daniel's world spun as the shadow in the doorway stepped forward. It was a man. And he was holding Emily's necklace in his hand. The man smiled. "You've been looking for her, haven't you?" Daniel's voice barely came out. "Where is she?" The stranger's grin widened. "You should have been more careful, Daniel. She found out." Before Daniel could speak again, the man raised something shiny in his other hand. Something metallic. Daniel's heart dropped. Daniel couldn't move. The man's cold eyes fixed on him, the metallic object glinting in the weak morning light. For a second, Daniel thought it was a knife, but then he realized it was Emily's missing bracelet, twisted and bent out of shape, like it had been ripped off her wrist. "Where did you get that?" Daniel demanded, his voice shaking. The man took a slow step closer, his boots sinking into the carpet. "I told you," he said softly. "She found out. And now you're going to, too." Daniel's pulse hammered in his ears. "Found out what?" But before the man could answer, there was a loud knock at the front door downstairs, 3 heavy thuds that echoed through the house. The man's expression changed. He looked toward the noise, then back at Daniel. "We'll finish this later," he hissed, and without another word, he turned and bolted down the stairs. Daniel ran after him, but by the time he reached the front door, it was hanging open and the stranger was gone. The street outside was empty, no cars, no sound, nothing but the faint rustle of leaves. The knocking had come from a delivery driver holding a small brown package. "Package for Emily Thompson," the man said. Daniel's hands trembled as he took it. Emily hadn't ordered anything in weeks. The box had no return address, just his wife's name written in black marker. He ripped it open. Inside was a USB flash drive, and a note. "If you want to know the truth, plug it in. Alone." Daniel's mouth went dry. He closed the door slowly, locked it, and stared at the small drive in his palm. Should he call the police? What if it was nothing? But something deep inside told him this was from Emily. Maybe a clue she left behind. He went upstairs, sat at his desk, and plugged it into his laptop. The screen flickered, and a single video file appeared, "Do not trust him.mp4. His stomach tightened as he clicked play. The shaky camera showed Emily sitting in their living room, her eyes red from crying. "If you're seeing this, Daniel," she said, her voice breaking, "it means I couldn't get away in time. I tried to tell you, but he was always watching. You thought I was being paranoid, but I wasn't. Someone's been in our house." Daniel leaned forward, his breath shallow. "I found a hidden camera behind the bookshelf," she continued, tears rolling down her cheeks. "And it wasn't the first one. They're everywhere. He told me he loved watching us sleep." She sniffed, glancing off camera. "I think he works with you, Daniel. At the office. Please." The video cut off suddenly. Daniel's heart stopped. His mind raced back through the men he worked with, accountants, quiet, harmless people. Except one. Steve Ralston. Steve had joined their firm 6 months ago. He was friendly, maybe too friendly. Always joking about marriage, asking too many questions about Emily. And last week, Steve had stopped coming to work, saying he was dealing with something personal. Daniel shot up from the desk, pacing. "No. No way," he muttered. But deep down, he knew. Steve was the man who'd stood in his doorway. He had Emily's necklace. Daniel grabbed his coat and keys. He wasn't going to wait for the police. If Steve had hurt Emily, he needed to find out, now. The drive to Steve's apartment was a blur of red lights and pounding thoughts. When he arrived, the building was eerily quiet. Apartment 2B, Steve's door, was slightly open. Daniel pushed it slowly. Steve. The smell hit him first, something rotten and metallic. The lights were off, the only glow coming from a small TV playing static. He stepped inside carefully, his heart thudding. The walls were covered in photos of Emily. Dozens of them. Her at the grocery store, walking to her car, sitting on their porch. Some were taken through the windows of their home. Daniel's knees nearly gave out. On the table sat a glass jar filled with something dark. Next to it, Emily's wedding ring. He turned toward the sound of a creak behind him. Looking for her, a voice whispered. Steve stepped out of the shadows, his grin stretching across his pale face. You shouldn't have come here. Daniel's fists clenched. Where is she? Steve tilted his head. You really want to know? He reached into his pocket and threw something onto the floor. It was Emily's scarf, torn, stained with what looked like dried blood. Daniel lunged forward, grabbing Steve by the collar. What did you do to her? Steve just laughed, a chilling, broken laugh. She tried to leave me. You just never noticed we were together before she married you. Daniel froze, disbelief washing over him. You're lying. Am I? Steve's eyes gleamed. She told me she'd tell you the truth. That's why I had to. Before he could finish, a loud bang echoed from the hallway. Someone had kicked the door open. Police. Hands where we can see them. Steve dropped to the floor, his laughter turning to screams. Daniel raised his hands, backing away. But as the officers stormed in, Daniel noticed something horrifying, Steve's computer screen still on, displaying a paused video feed. The timestamp read, Live, Thompson Residence, 9:03 p.m. The camera was still on. Someone else was in Daniel's house. Daniel's blood ran cold. The live video feed on Steve's computer showed the inside of his own living room, the same couch, the same family photo above the fireplace. But what made his heart nearly stop was the figure moving across the screen. Someone was standing in his house. The person wore dark clothes and a hood, their face hidden. They were walking slowly, almost like they knew Daniel was watching. Then the figure turned toward the camera, and smiled. It wasn't Steve. Daniel stumbled backward, his voice breaking. Who is that? He yelled, pointing at the monitor. One of the officers rushed over, squinting at the screen. That's live? Daniel nodded, panic flooding his chest. That's my house. That's right now. The officers exchanged looks. Get a trace on that feed, one said into his radio. But Daniel wasn't waiting. He pushed past them, sprinting out of the apartment. He had to get home. He had to see for himself. The drive felt endless. His hands shook on the wheel. Every red light, every car in front of him felt like a wall between him and the truth. By the time he pulled into his driveway, his house was dark, just as it was on the screen. He got out quietly, heart hammering so hard it hurt. The front door was slightly open. He hadn't left it that way. Emily, he whispered, stepping inside. Silence. The air was heavy, still. The smell of coffee lingered, faint but old. His eyes darted toward the corner of the living room where the hidden camera had been found behind the shelf. It was gone. The shelf had been moved. He took a deep breath and walked farther in, every step creaking like a warning. Then he heard it, a soft tapping sound coming from upstairs. Tap. 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 He gripped the banister, climbing slowly, the floorboards groaning beneath him. The tapping stopped. He turned the corner toward the bedroom, the same one where he'd last seen Emily's things untouched. The door was half closed. A shadow moved behind it. "Who's there?" Daniel called out, his voice shaking. No answer. Just silence. He pushed the door open, and froze. Emily was sitting on the bed. For a second, Daniel thought his heart might stop. She was alive. Pale, trembling, but alive. Her eyes filled with tears when she saw him. "Daniel," she whispered. He rushed to her side, wrapping his arms around her. "Emily. Oh my God, I thought you were." She shook her head, clutching him tightly. "He locked me in the basement for days," she sobbed. "He said if I tried to run, he'd hurt you. He said there was someone else watching." Daniel pulled back, confused. "Someone else? Who?" Before she could answer, the sound of slow clapping echoed from the hallway. They both turned. A tall figure stood in the doorway, the same one from the live feed. His hood was down now. It wasn't Steve. It was someone Daniel knew. Detective Harris. The lead investigator on Emily's case. Daniel blinked in disbelief. What are you doing here?" Harris smiled faintly, stepping closer. "Tying up loose ends." Emily gasped, backing away. "You're one of them?" He tilted his head. "You should have stayed gone, Emily. We had a deal. But you couldn't resist telling him, could you?" Daniel's chest tightened. "What deal?" "She saw something she wasn't supposed to," Harris said calmly. "That night Steve broke into your house, he wasn't acting alone. We've been watching you both for months. Your wife found the cameras, and we needed her quiet. But she panicked. Ran to me for help. I told her I'd protect her. And I did, by keeping her where no one would find her." Daniel's fists clenched. "You sick." Harris raised his gun. "Don't. I liked you, Daniel. You were never supposed to get this far." The moment hung in the air, the kind of silence that cracks before everything shatters. Emily's eyes darted to the nightstand. Daniel followed her gaze. The lamp. In one motion, she grabbed it and swung. The lamp shattered against Harris's arm, knocking the gun loose. Daniel lunged, tackling him to the floor. The two men struggled, fists flying, until a gunshot exploded through the room. Daniel froze. The sound rang in his ears. Harris slumped to the floor, his gun clattering beside him. Emily stood behind him, shaking, holding the other gun, Steve's gun, in her trembling hands. Her breath came in broken gasps. "It's over," she whispered. Daniel stared at her, heart pounding, unable to speak. Sirens wailed in the distance, someone had called the police after the shot. When the officers burst through the door minutes later, they found Harris dead, Steve's twisted apartment full of evidence, and Emily barely able to stand. Days later, Daniel sat beside her hospital bed. She was safe now, sleeping peacefully. For the first time in weeks, he let himself breathe. But as he looked at her, something caught his eye, a small black dot on the corner of the hospital room wall. A tiny red light. Blinking. Recording. Daniel's breath caught in his throat. He slowly turned his head, realizing it wasn't just a light, it was another hidden camera. And this time, the screen on the monitor across the hall flickered to life. Underneath the feed, a single message appeared. She wasn't the only one being watched. The light blinked again. Then went dark.